Okay, let's go ahead and get started. Welcome everybody to the Broadcast Coordinate Update webinar. My name is Tyler Collier. I'm the Product Manager for SmartNet North America. We've got a lot of information to cover today. We are recording this session, so if anybody um, has to drop off, or if you have someone else in your organization is unable to attend this evening, they can watch this recording along with the other recordings or sessions that we'll be conducting in the coming weeks. So with that, we'll get going. So tonight's agenda is we're going to be doing a quick correction service update, just real cursory, touching on where we stand overall from a correction service perspective, introduce folks to support resources that they may or may not know about, specifically in advance of moving into the more deeper topics, so that when you hear me reference support as we move through the presentation, you have a good grounding of where that comes from. Additional to that, we'll really get into the coordinates and integrity monitoring, specifically focusing on the new realization solutions and reference frames that are now being introduced as part of this, and then really get into what if you need something different, if you need to get back to currently what we're broadcasting, how does this affect you, and really try to define that well enough so that once we get through the really heavy part, you have a good idea of what you need to do. In addition to that, how do you track what we're doing as far as the coordinates go with coordinate epic tracking, the site search tool that we have in the portal. Of course, then important dates, wrapping up, and questions. At any time during this webinar, if you do have a question, feel free to ask. We do have staff on to ask that question, answer questions as they come up. I will pause, and even if a staff member has answered a question, if it's something that is really pertinent that I think can benefit everybody on the call, then we will answer that live for everyone to see. We will also timestamp those and put those questions in a Q&A forum for later watching should you need to go back and see it again. And that would probably happen by towards the end of this week, first of next, but we'll be pretty deep in coordinates for the remainder of the year. So there could be just a small delay as time allows to get those timestamps up, because that's a little bit more tedious process. So with that, we'll get kicked off. So correction service update. Just a quick update by the numbers. We have a little over 1,500 stations now currently in operation with SmartNet, with over 1.4 billion acres in coverage. This does make us the largest service provider in North America. We have 50 states are now serviced by SmartNet and 8 Canadian provinces. This means we have coverage in 470 of the top 500 metropolitan statistical areas. And in the US, that means that we cover about 288 million folks, and in Canada, about 28 million. So the takeaway from this is we have coverage where you need it. This is a slide showing as of 10/2019 where we have coverage. There's been a few additions in the past month and a half, 2 months, but not a great expansion that we've been on a tear of recent note. We do have some stations coming in Texas here in the near future, and then we had some additions in New York and Massachusetts to improve density and coverage there. So those will be coming online with this new adjustment that will be launched on January 6th, which we're going to be talking about today. In addition to coverage, we spend a great deal of time investing in our infrastructure from an expansion and footprint perspective, but we are also very focused on GNSS infrastructure, making sure that you have access to the latest constellations and signals. So as of today, 100% of SmartNet is GPS and GLONASS capable, meaning that full GG in every station and every part of SmartNet. You can go out and get full GPS and GLONASS. Just to kind of give you an idea, we started that project about the time we started SmartNet. So it's been a long time coming. This threshold was crossed last year. And now we're working on the GNSS component. About 81% of SmartNet now is GNSS capable, meaning GPS, GLONASS, Galileo, Beidou, GPS L5 as well. We're getting up there, but this will be a long rollout. Most of the metropolitan areas are now fully GNSS. I don't think there's any real large holdouts in the U.S. at least in our metropolitan coverage areas. In this list below, you can see where we're 100 GNSS, 100% GNSS capable. We are currently actively working in the Greater Toronto market in Ontario. That is being worked on and rolled out, and then again, additional investments will be made next year to try to get us closer to that 100% threshold. So we'll keep working on this. If you do ever wonder where we stand, you will be able to go to us. There is a support article that has a complete listing of all of our GNSS markets in it. We keep that up to date. As we get to the support, I will introduce that to you as we go. To gain access to GNSS, we provide 3 different flavors of GNSS corrections and formats. The first being the MSM IMAX, so the multi-signal message IMAX signal. This gives you a real reference station, traceability, repeatability, and that is the flavor that we would typically recommend for a majority of our users. Single baseline, if you just want single baseline corrections. MSM nearest, if you also may be also in an island area, somewhere we don't have full network corrections, and some of those the round areas. If you were to look at the coverage map, you might see some roundish areas. Those would be single baseline areas, or of course MSM VRS. Those are the 3 different flavors. This was launched in 2017. So we launched this in, I believe, May or June of 2017. So we've had GNSS corrections for a little over 2.5 years, and these are available today and will work with your existing login. So if you haven't made that jump, please do. You just need to change your mount point, and all the other connection details are the same. So you can hop on, get GNSS corrections if your rover is capable of them, take off and start working. So quick question. What is the impact of hybrid GNSS networks, i.e. some L5, some without? The solution just go as low as possible. So that is a relatively complex question to answer. It depends on where you are in the network, and it depends on along where you are in the network, what placement you are in the convex hull of the network. We will typically not advertise a network as full GNSS until everything in that market is fully GNSS, because it's just too many caveats, asterisks, stars, etc., to know exactly if you're going to have full GNSS coverage or not. So we always try to do that so you know what you're getting. If we're 100% GNSS, if we say we're going to be GNSS, there are no stations that could unduly influence your solution just because of that. There is no way to, fake it. So you can't be getting GNSS from a full L5 signal from one station and then the other stations contributing to the network or to your cell are just GPS and GLONASS and no L5. There is no way to do that without faking things out, and so we don't do that. So if everything's GNSS, or you're just going to get GG, and so we make sure that we make that distinction in when we say or announce a market is fully GNSS. So support resources. You'll hear me bang on this all night long. And we really try to have a fully functioning support portal and knowledge base for our users when we get into instances like this that we're about to cross over into, but also for day-to-day support activities where you can self-support and don't have to wait for us to respond to a ticket. So we've got a lot of different support resources available to you. First and foremost is the support portal. So this is at support.smartnetna.com. You go here. and you get a wealth of knowledge. Anytime we think we need a knowledge base article, we create a knowledge base article. If we think that question is going to be asked more than once, we want to put it up there so that you guys can go and find it. We really encourage you to use this for self-support. We try to explain it clearly, concisely, and get you the information that you need as you need it. So as we talk about coordinates and we talk about what we're doing today, and we talk about this and we're talking about that, and you want to go find what we talked about, this is the place to go. We have keyword search. So if you type in MRF or MYCS2 or version 7.1 or any of these simple words that I'm going to spout off as we go through this webinar today, you will find the requisite support article that will assist you in that, or you'll find a webinar, this one or the other ones that we'll be talking about it. In addition to the support knowledge base, we also have system status. So this is outside of our infrastructure. So if you ever have a problem with SmartNet and you wonder, is it me? Is it SmartNet? Is it my login? Is it everybody? This is the place to go, because this is going to have the most up-to-date information. These typically get updated within 10 to 20 minutes of a major outage. That's about as fast as we can do it, just because we're diagnosing what might be going wrong. But if you see there's an outage, you're not able to work, before you submit a support ticket, go to status.smartnetna.com and look and see if there are any incident reports on there about the area that you're working in. We try to get that up as fast as we possibly can as soon as we know that there's a large scale issue and we've diagnosed it, or we've quickly determined we can't diagnose what that problem is, then we'll put it up here. It also has a run rate of percentages. So you'll see that very often or very seldom we don't have large scale outages. So very often the issues that you are experiencing will be much more localized to you, or specifically to your equipment, or to your credentials. If you want to get down to a more localized level, of course, we have station status, so the live status map. So live.smartnetna.com takes you to the live status map. And then lastly, we also make all of our announcements, miscellaneous information via Twitter. You don't have to tweet. You don't have to have a Twitter account. I strongly encourage you not to these days. All kidding aside, this has a lot of information that we wouldn't put up in the incident system, status system. Good information. If it goes in status, it goes in Twitter. We put some smaller things in Twitter that might not make it to the status announcements or to large scale emails that go out. But you can also just find this right on the portal. So our entire Twitter feed's right there in the portal. So if you need to see what's going on with SmartNet, likelihood is we've posted it there so that you can find that information if it's not somewhere else. Right there in the portal in the right-hand column, you'll see announcements or Twitter, and you'll find the stream there. So it was quick. I'm talking fast. Promise I'm going to slow down in a second. Just wanted to get through those housekeeping issues and get into the meat and potatoes of what we're going to be talking about tonight. So let's do a quick look and see if there's any questions. Okay. No additional questions right now that I can see. All right, SmartNet coordinates and integrity monitoring. So positioning. Why are we talking about today what we're talking about? Well, there are two organizations that really are the arbiter of coordinates in the US and Canada where we operate. The first being NGS in the US, and the second being NRCAN in Canada. So back a number of years ago, we adopted the NGS's proposed standards for RTN operations. This requires an accurate tie to the National Special Reference System, but we also have to be able to provide internal integrity inside the tolerances that NGS does require. So NGS requires 2 centimeters horizontally, 4 centimeters vertically of a tie to the NRCAN for us to be in compliance. And historically, we've achieved less than 1 centimeter X, Y, and Z. So when we start talking about this MYCS2 solution here in a little bit, these acronyms that I'm going to say a lot, is to assure that we can maintain these ties and meet the expectations that our user base has to be able to tie into NGS or trust the solutions that they get from us and from other parties. In Canada, It's even a stricter compliance agreement that we have with NRCAN. So in the U.S., it's a voluntary adoption of their standards. In Canada, we actually have signed a formal agreement with NRCAN, the NRCAN compliance agreement, as an RTN operator to participate in their program. This again means that we have an accurate tie to the Canadian NSRS, but we also have the ability to do internal integrity that we require. And what this requires is that NRCAN provides us with broadcast coordinates, and that we adopt those broadcast coordinates to be able to broadcast those out to the users. So they are the arbiter of the coordinates in Canada. Now, we do have some leeway here that we have to provide coordinates out that are within a certain tolerance. So if we determine a station, a new position for a station that's new and coming online, we can determine a coordinate on it, and we can broadcast that coordinate. They will then at some point during the year give us coordinates for that station. And as long as our station broadcast coordinates fit within their tolerances, then we can continue to broadcast our position. Why this matters is because the moment that we change the position of a station that's being broadcast, it immediately influences the user. So we have to make sure that we do that very, very, very sparingly. And that's one of the reasons we're talking today, and what's going to happen on January 6th is because we are adopting new broadcast coordinates both in the US and Canada that affect that. Greater than 97% of SmartNet stations are in compliance. That means we're delivering data to NRCAN, and that that the broadcast coordinates that we are sending out are within the stated tolerance that NRCAN requires. Now, anytime that we start talking about coordinates, we also have to talk about integrity. And so integrity monitoring program is something that we've been doing for a long time now. I don't even know how long we've been doing this program. It's not new. I think since we launched the original adjustment in 2012, so something around 7 years, I believe. So this is a 7-day average of positions are computed every day, so that we can evaluate the coordinates on all stations in SmartNet. So every day, new coordinates are computed for all 1,500 stations that are part of SmartNet, and then we average the last 7-day solution and compare that to our published values. Why do we do a 7-day average? Simply to get rid of noise, to make sure that we don't have any outliers, that nothing happened with the control during that 7-day period or something that would really unduly influence or create a lot of false alarms, which is not something that we want. We do have two different thresholds. We have an alarm threshold, which means that if a station exceeds 2.5 centimeters, there is an alarm that's created in the system so that we know that there's a change in the Cartesian space of 1.4 by 1.4 by 1.4 centimeters. And this requires us to go look at it, check, see what's going on, and determine if there is a real change or shift in the coordinates. That may not seem like a lot, or may seem like too much, but with 1,500 stations, always doing daily solutions, we're calculating off a rapid ephemeris, not a precise ephemeris. This assures that we get the best results to the customers, as well as not creating undue alarms that makes us just ignore them. Our update threshold, so if we don't monkey with station coordinates again, broadcast coordinates, unless we have to, and our have to tolerance is 3.5 centimeters. So 2 by 2 by 2. If a station exceeds that tolerance, then we actually kick off and we start taking actions to adjust the coordinates of that station. Should that happen, then we would first update the marker coordinates, or excuse me, the marker ID, which is the RTCM ID to you guys, which you get. We'll change that. We'll still leave the station name the same. And then if it exceeds a larger threshold, or we know there's a physical change of the mast or something in those arenas, then we'd actually completely re-site code. So a whole new site code on that station, a whole new RTCM ID of that station, whole new record for that station. So that old station no longer exists, and now we have a new station with a new name and a new number. We try very hard not to have to, or hope we don't have to change coordinates of a station more than 3.5 centimeters. And these are in non-dynamic areas. So California doesn't fit this because it's always moving. We don't want to do that if we can avoid it. But if we do, we have very strict, stringent tolerances that we meet to make it make sure we're able to do it. So those are coordinates. That's the general idea of why we're talking about this. The driving reason between all these next slides is NRCAN and NGS have released new realizations in NGS's parlance, or new solutions in the NRCAN parlance. And so to make sure that we stay in compliance with those two organizations, to make sure we continue to fit to the NSRS, to make sure that everything continues to work as expected, as we add new stations, or as we do this or as we do that, that we can trust that the coordinates that we're broadcasting can maintain continuities station to station, area to area, or across an entire continent. So that brings us to new realizations, new solutions, and new reference frames. Now, the first question that we were asked last time out the gate is this the new 2022 reference frame? No. We will talk about that later. It is not that. Don't freak out. It's not a gigantic monster change that is coming in 2022 for the US. Most likely 23, 24 possibly, but we'll get to that later. So don't freak out and think it's that change. We are not moving there yet. This is simply an update to the realization of the current solution here in the US, and an update to the solution in Canada. But as we talk about these things, to make sure that we're talking the same language, I've got some definitions here. And you're probably going to roll your eyes and go, great definitions, awesome. But at the end of the day, to make sure you guys understand what I'm saying, because it's going to get really dense really fast, we want to make sure that the definitions and the words that I'm using are understood to make sure you don't get lost in the weeds. Processing coordinates. You'll hear me say processing. You'll hear me say physical. Those can be interchanged very easily between us in the way that we talk about things, but quite easily, the physical coordinate, the processing coordinate, is the physical coordinate of the station on the planet surface relative to an IGS or ITRF reference frame. So an international, a global reference frame. So that's where the stations are on the planet of the Earth as they float along the tectonic plates. As the plates float around, it's tied to that. So it's tied to the underlying reference frame that IGS produces, and that ties back to the satellite ephemeris information. It ties everything together. The broadcast coordinate. This is the coordinate used for computation of a differential baseline between the reference station and the rover. The physical coordinates kind of in the back end. This is what we use to make the network correction, to do the processing in the back end. The broadcast is actually what we send out on one of the mount points to you, and then that coordinate is what you use to calculate your differential baseline between the reference station and the rover. Okay, so we can have a bunch of different broadcast coordinates for a station. Doesn't have to be just one. We can broadcast the physical coordinate. We can broadcast an alternative coordinate. We can broadcast the last coordinate of the station, which we're going to do in this case. And we're going to talk about in great detail later. But the broadcast coordinate is what we send out on that RTK correction stream that you receive on the rover. And those are the things that we don't monkey with unless we have to. Velocity, I've already said velocity once. Velocity is the direction and speed of a station's movement relative to a reference frame. When we talk about like NAD83, there are no velocities because it's a fixed plate reference frame. But when we talk about IGS or ITRF, those velocities of how the plate is moving affect each station individually. And so that's a velocity that we have to take into account. And you'll hear me say velocity a lot today because this is one of the prime reasons that we have to update coordinates as we move forward to make sure things continue to fit together. Non-dynamic stations, these are stations that have low horizontal velocities relative to a fixed frame model, so relative to NAD83. High dynamic stations are stations that have high horizontal velocities relative to the fixed frame, so NAT83. Reference frame, this is a coordinate system allowing measurement within a frame. So this is NAT83. This is, NAT83 NA2011. This is NAT83 NYCS2. This is NAT83 CSRS version 6, version 7.1. So these are the reference frames that we're talking about working in. Epic date is the point in time a coordinate is referenced, not necessarily calculated, but referenced to. This processing run is just wrapping up for the January 6th adjustment, but the epic date will be 2020, meaning we'll look at the point in time where the station is going to be on January 1st. And put the coordinate reference to that time for like California, so that we have an epic date of 2020. The epic date for most folks right now is 2010 in most of the US for broadcast coordinates. So that's 9 years ago. And this affects us while we're doing this again. So epic is the point in time in which coordinates is referenced. And then realization or solution, this is an identifier of defining when, how, what data, et cetera, was used to compute a coordinate or a coordinate set. So you heard me say a second ago, NYCS2, NYCS1, solution version 6.0 or 7.1. Those are realizations. Those are solutions. NAT83 is the reference frame, and then the realization is the NYCS2 or the CSRS version 7.1. So you've already heard me say these a couple times. IGS 08 is the previous realization of the IGS global reference frame. So that is what our physical coordinates, our processing coordinates are currently in today as of right now. We are moving to the updated ITRF 2014 current realization of the International Terrestrial Reference Frame. ITRF, IGRS reference frames are accurate within a centimeter or so to each other, so we make no delineation between those two in the real world. So if you hear me say IGS or ITRF, those can be used interchangeably. The 08 or the 2014 is important because that is the realization of them. So that's what we're focused on. NAT83 is the horizontal coordinate system for US, Canada, and Mexico as relates to the North American datum, 83, to the North American plate. So it's a fixed plate. NA 2011 is the United States Spatial Reference System. So you'll hear me say NAT83 NA 2011 a lot. And so that's saying that's basically the realization, loosely, the solution tag. NYCS1, NYCS2 is the multi-year coordinate core solution version 1, and then version 2, the sequel, which is what was just released in September, and it's the reason we're here. One of the reasons we're here today. CSRS is the Canadian Spatial Reference System, so you'll see that in some of the notes today. And then NSRS is just the National Spatial Reference System. So, as of September of this year, NGS has now released their NAT83, NA 2011, NYCS2, EPIC 2010 new realization. That is a absolute mouthful, and I understand that. You have to be careful because I'm going to reference some things in a second that we'll talk about. But this is really important to understand the difference between where we are right now, which is NYCS1, and where we're going to be on January 6th, which is NYCS2. NGS has released GEOID 18, which just this week they have informed us that there is an error in. So please do not be using that. Aside from not using it because there was an error in it, you also should not be using it until we have released the NYCS2 coordinates in January. But there should be more details out there from NGS on the GEOID 18 issue that they have just updated, which should not be news to anyone. Every time a new GEOID goes out, there's always an issue with that first GEOID out the gate. So don't adopt that at least until January for us, because the coordinates do not fit NYCS1 to NYCS2. And they've also released their ITRF 2014 EPIC 2010 new reference frame. So these are the three things that just happened. To SmartNet users, this happened far too late for our fall adjustment in early November. So we did our traditional semi-annual fall adjustment in November. The coordinates for NYCS2 and ITRF 2014 were just released in mid-September. So there was not enough time for us to take those new realizations and reference frames and include them in the November adjustment. So we basically punted, and our punt was until January 6th. So January 6, 2020, we will adopt the NYCS2, so the multi-year core solution 2, and the ITRF 2014 coordinates for all of the U.S. Again, do not begin using GEO 2018 until we release the NYCS2 solutions in January, because NYCS1 and NYCS2 have some differences specifically for GEO 18, and also GEO 18 has some already inherent errors that NGS announced this week. So what does this mean? The newly reprocessed solution NYCS2, it's now aligned to 2014. They updated the EPIC from the old 2005 EPIC on their ITRF data set that they had to 2010. This supersedes the previous NYCS1 solution and shows improved velocity uncertainties over NYCS1 because they have longer time series and they have more stations that have time series. In the NYCS1 solution, which was done in 2011 and released in 2012, there were about 1,337 stations in the solution with velocities. Now there's a little under 2,400. This means that where there could have been predicted velocities before, there are now real velocities because they have a time series for them. And this is one of the things that makes us have to update coordinates. Because where these velocity uncertainties have been improved, that means there could be changes to the underlying velocities of stations that we've relied on in the past. Meaning that if one station had a positive velocity in the past, just of say a couple millimeters, and now it has a negative velocity because it's a real velocity as opposed to predictive, that means over that 9 years change in EPIC, that couple millimeters a year change in velocity, now you're starting to see real 2, 3, 4 centimeters difference in the real world position of that station, relative to where we thought it was. Why does this matter? Because I don't care about this station way the heck over here. I only care about this station, and it is where it is. It comes down to when we do this, if the underlying velocity model, which we rely on to move through time, is different, then you can have big discontinuities from station to station. Should we need to move a station? Should we need to update a station? Should we need to analyze coordinates on a station? All those things come to play. So that requires us to take this into consideration. And it's one of the primary drivers for the move from NYCS1 to NYCS2. That's the velocities. Should you want to have really good reading material, this link right here, NGS NOA Gov coords.html there. There's a lot of great information there that talks about the NYCS2 solution, what they did, how they did it. I encourage you to read it to kind of get a background of doing what, understanding what we're doing here and why we're doing it. When you go there and you read that document, however, there is a possible point of confusion. I have tried to take this up with NGS. I have not still, several weeks later, gotten an answer. NGS did not update the datum tag, which causes us some confusion when we talk about things. And so in short, the NAT 83 NA 2011 EPIC 2010 naming convention was not updated. And if you go back through some of their old presentations, you will see that they had a datum tag. So NAT 83, the little image on the right hand side here, NAT 83 2011 is a data tag. It's the year the adjustment was completed. 2011 is the EPIC date. They didn't update that. So in the NGS release, it says NYCS2 supersedes the previous reference frame in realization, which was released in 2011 under the name of NYCS1. So there's some discontinuity here between how they talk about it in the past and how they talk about it now, to try to make it as clear as we possibly can. When we talk about things from here going forward, we will specifically talk about NAT 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, EPIC 2010, or NYCS1, EPIC 2010. We will talk about it in those terms so that it's very clear that we're talking about the new solution versus the old solution. Again, as we get more information from NGS of why did they not update this datum tag, this realization tag, we will put that out there. But for right now, this is how we're going to talk about it to make it as clear as we possibly can to our customers when we go back and forth between NYCS1 and NYCS2. All right. Any questions? Pause for a second for a message from our sponsors. Okie dokie. No open questions right now, so we'll keep soldiering on. So in Canada, what's this mean? It means that NRCAN has released their NAT 83 CRS version 7.1 solution in EPIC 2010. NRCAN has also released their ITRF 2014 EPIC 2010 solution. And so what does this mean for SmartNet users? It means we'll have a coordinated release and concurrent adoption for our US and our Canadian coordinates to move to NYCS2 in the US and to move to version 7.1 in Canada. This adoption will take place on January 6, 2020, just like the US adoption. And this will allow, again, us to stay in compliance with our NRCAN compliance agreement and move to the newest 7.1 solution. So what does this look like? This is a newly released solution for version 7.1. Technically speaking, it's not supposed to be out till January, but they were kind enough to get it to us actually this week. So a multi-year solution through GPS week 2077. And this means that we will move from our old solution, which is 6.0, to this new in our CAN provided solution 7.1. Again, because we have improvements over the 7.x solution, 7.0, which was released earlier this year, which we didn't adopt because we were still in compliance as far as tolerances. But we want to take this opportunity to get to the correct 7.1 solution. The benefits, longer time series again, new stations, filling in previous coverage gaps. Again, the velocity field was improved, which means a more accurate propagation of coordinates between epochs. If you're talking about the absolute, it's a more accurate propagation of coordinates between epochs. But because you have new stations, you have more accurate velocity fields. That means if you have new stations that we bring on that were the coordinates were determined with the old velocity models, and you have new stations that we bring on, excuse me, you have old stations that we brought on with the old velocity models, and you have new stations that we bring on with new velocity models, and they were literally sitting right next to each other, there could be a discontinuity because of the difference in the underlying velocity model. So it's another reason that we have to update as we want to make sure that as we expand, as we densify, as we have to move stations, that we don't have those discontinuities between stations because their coordinates were determined in a different way using a different velocity model. Again, NRCAN has a lot of great information. Here, the web app.goi.nrcan.gc.ca, link right here on the screen. Check it out. It's awesome. It will be linked in the support article that has these webinars in it. So you will be able to find those links in those webinars. in those support documents. So you don't have to remember that or write this down or do anything like that. But it will be there. So I encourage you to check it out. It talks about how they do what they do, and you'll be able to see it there as well. So, any questions? Or do you want me just to answer this question right here? Okay. We'll hold that question to the end. Benjamin will hold that question to the end. All right. So, what does this adjustment mean to me? First off, when's all this going to happen? Well, execution plan has been completed. All the preparations have been finished. Data collection was conducted. Initial processing has been completed, and final processing is underway. I took delivery of coordinates for Northeast and Southeast last week. I literally just took delivery of North Central and South Central US about 7 minutes ago. They popped in from Jill. So those just showed up in my email box just a second ago. Had a small shiver when I saw them. Like I said a second ago, we also got NRCAN's coordinates earlier this week. So final processing is underway, and they're starting to show up so that we can start QA and QC of the new coordinates once all the processing has been completed. So you may be asking, well, Tyler, if you don't have all the numbers when you start talking in a second and I'll start freaking out, how do you know that those are the numbers? Well, this is the final processing run. We've already done an initial evaluation and an initial processing run. So we have a pretty good idea. But the final processing will be final. So we'll get to that in a second. And then the final step is publishing of coordinates, and that will happen when we begin the rollout of new coordinates on January 5th, 2020 at 10 p.m. Eastern Time as our typical standard. So on January 5th, we will start rolling out our updates to the processing coordinates and more importantly to the broadcast coordinates for all stations in SmartNet. And so if you have a question of, does this affect me? Yes, it affects you because we are updating all broadcast coordinates in all of SmartNet. How much it will affect you? It depends literally down to the station level. So when you say, does it really affect me? Only you will be able to answer that because it will literally be down at the station level. The stations that you typically rely on are only a few mil affected. Doesn't really affect you. If a station that you typically rely on is a lot, then it does affect you, which we'll cover more in great pains and details. So processing coordinate update. When do we do processing coordinate updates? Well, we typically do this on a semi-annual basis, so it's typically spring and fall. We do this to all stations, but again, processing coordinates, the physical coordinates in the back end, they don't affect you when we update them. The only effect it has is it allows us to produce a better network solution for you, but it doesn't affect your relative measurements between the base from the reference station to the rover. We now have, on top of a semi-annual basis, we have to add as we move realizations or solution transitions to when we do our processing coordinates updates. So all processing coordinates will have an epic published on SmartNet. Right now, today, our published epic for our physical coordinates, our processing coordinates, is 2019-750. That was October 1st. Processing run, in October 1st, epic 2019-750, and those were launched in November 6th when we updated coordinates. For this adjustment, January 6th, the published processing epic will be 2020 flat. So that will be what is launched on January 6th. So all processing coordinates will be updated. Along with the update, they will also change reference frame. So they will go from an IGS 08 current epic to the new ITRF 2014 realization. So as I said a second ago, IGS 08 epic 2019-750 is what we're currently on today. On January 6th, when the stations come back online or the network comes back online, we'll be working on processing coordinates of ITRF 2014, epic 2020. We will return to a standard spring and fall cadence immediately following that. That means in March, we will do this all over again for our processing coordinates, which means we will have done 3 adjustments in the span of 6 months, which is absolute lunacy, but it's what we do for you guys to make sure that everything is as right as we can make it. Broadcast coordinates. This again is computed typically on a semi-annual basis. So broadcast coordinate updates are done in California semi-annually. That means we actually update broadcast coordinates in California twice a year. So spring and fall, we actually broadcast different coordinates for spring and fall. And the reason we do this is because there's this big slab of land that is moving a different direction than the North American plate. And if you happen to get a station across the plate boundary, you're on the North American plate and your station's on the Pacific plate or vice versa, then if we didn't update this and you jump to a station that's on your plate that you're standing on, you would see this gigantic leap very quickly. So we don't want that to happen. We want it to be as consistent as possible. And this is the reason we do this semi-annual adjustment in California. In BC, Louisiana, Oregon, and Washington, we evaluate these on an annual basis to determine if a new epic is required. Really, Victoria Island is the only place in the BC where this could be a factor. We haven't actually had to do it because it's not moved enough to have any material effect. Same thing in Louisiana. This is a subsidence issue. Again, not to have a material effect. Oregon and Washington, there was a small change from 2012 to 2018. So we did update in 2018. That was 6 years. We are going to update now to 2020 in Oregon and Washington just to stay consistent with what we've done there in the past. Non-dynamic stations, we evaluate on an annual basis. We need to update the broadcast coordinates. Typically, we don't have to, only if they fall outside of that 35 millimeter tolerance. Or if there's an unplanned update that may occur after a seismic event, or if a large displacement is discovered, that is not localized to the station, that would be another reason to do a broadcast coordinate update. Or now, if there's a new NSRS, either US or Canada, that's being realized and released by a governing agency. So NGS in the US, NRCAN in Canada. And so because we have this new realization, this is the time that we need to update our broadcast coordinates to stay in compliance. Now, broadcast coordinates can get a little confusing, but for a vast majority of our users, it's fairly simple. In the US, we will be moving to NAT 83, NA 2011, MYCS2, EPIC 2010. So anywhere that's not California, Washington, and Oregon, that's what you're going to be getting. You're going to be getting the new MYCS2 realization, EPIC 2010. Canada. All of Canada will get NAT 83 CSRS version 7.1 EPIC 2010. So that's the new solution from NRCAN. And we will still have some alternate or other broadcast coordinates available. But this is the vast majority on the production mount point. So if I connect to MSM_IMAX, this is what I'm going to get for everywhere but Washington State, Oregon, and California. Canada, I'm going to get this. Everywhere else in the US, this is what I'm going to get. So you don't have to worry about it. Not a big deal. The big deal is MYCS2 and version 7.1, there could be station coordinate differences, but it's not going to jump because of a difference in in Epic or other realization. High dynamic stations we'll be moving to in California, Washington, Oregon, or if we had any high dynamic stations in Canada, which we don't, we'll be moving to NAT 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, Epic 2020 in California. Same thing in Washington State and Oregon. We'll be moving to the NAT 83, NA 2011, NYCS2, Epic 2020. And we currently have no stations in Canada broadcasting a 2020 or later Epic, or will not either. And again, this happens on January 6th. Not today, not tomorrow, but on January 6th. And here's the big question. What does it mean to you? When you do all these changes, what can we expect the coordinates to change? Well, it could be as little as 5 millimeters. Most every station will change. But they can change in excess of 5 centimeters. Next question you're asking is, where is this going to happen? Why? Well, this is not location or area dependent. This is station dependent. We will publish a knowledge base article with stations requiring changes of greater than 35 millimeters. So we will have a list of all stations that are going to move more than 35 millimeters. We're just going to call them out and say station XYZ1 has moved more than 35 millimeters. If you need to know how much it's moved, then you'll need to go to the site information search tool, look at its new and its old coordinates, and determine how much it's moved. So that'll all be in a knowledge base article. That'll be all there for you to find. What is causing this large change on some stations and small on others? Well, it goes back to the underlying velocity model. The change in the velocity model in areas can dramatically affect the position of stations as they move through the reference frames and epics. The other reason is stations may have been brought online with a preliminary solution, a 7-day solution, instead of a precise solution, a 14-day solution when originally commissioned. And they've never been greater than that 35 millimeters outside of tolerance. They've never fallen outside of that 25 millimeters alarm threshold of published versus adopted. So if those things haven't happened, we haven't updated them. But we're going to take this opportunity now to update them should we need to. But the biggest, largest single driver behind all this is the underlying velocity models and how those affect where the stations are relative to the time we're at today. The question we got last time, and we expect to get this time, is why are you changing this? Why can't we just stay on those forever? We can just stay on the old ones. We don't have to update. We don't have to worry about it. Well, first is we wouldn't be in compliance with the current NSRS realization or solution. We wouldn't be tied to that real NSRS that is being published and adopted and maintained by the governing bodies. Second is to assure consistency between station coordinates. And you heard me say this earlier. The new velocity model makes consistency between stations, new and old, impossible. If we have an old station that was determined with the old velocity model, and we have a new station determined with a new velocity model, and literally those stations are 30 kilometers apart, they could have a drastically different interstation spacing between them because of those velocity models. Well, what does that mean? Tyler, that doesn't matter. I'm just connected to this one station. Today you're connected to that one station, and tomorrow you go out and that station had a hiccup. That station's offline, and you get connected to the other station, and all of a sudden you have a jump in your position, and then you're sending a support ticket going, these two stations don't match. My coordinates that I'm measuring do not match. Why is that? And the answer simply would be because we adopted positions of stations with two different velocity models, and so it's going to cause a problem. Integrity monitoring and internal consistency is greatly improved with the update. Some of the other things we're doing on the back end, this is going to improve how we can monitor the integrity of the stations. So we want to take this opportunity to do that. And lastly, we're carrying 7 years of possible localized movement or deformation. So a station has, all stations are moving. maybe a little, maybe a lot, and they may be moving a little or a lot because of plate tectonics, because of localized subsidence, because a building is moving, because of a lot of different issues that are beyond our control. Um, and while we may see that, again, if I have two stations right next to it and one is not moving a lot and one is moving a lot, and a lot to us is millimeters, uh, you know, centimeter level. But if you jump between those two stations in a survey, because of whatever reason, because one station has more satellites than the other station, and we start delivering corrections from this other station, that could cause a jump in your position. So all of these, the compliance issue, the consistency issue, and then carrying 7 years of a possible movement, and having not updated broadcast coordinates, all of these play a part in while we're updating and changing the broadcast coordinates. So a question was, a near solution could change more drastically than a network solution based on individual station changes. No. No, not if I'm using IMAX or near. If I'm using IMAX and I get a solution from a station, and I would to dial in, and I was to get near and get a near solution from the same station. Um, Aside from and let's just assume that we're relatively close to the station, so we're not dealing with distance dependent errors. Then whatever the shift is in the IMAX solution, whatever the shift of the station's position is, and the IMAX solution is going to apply equally in the nearest, or vice versa. VRS would not see as dramatic a shift because it's a virtual station. It's going to be influenced, but probably not quite as much. But we'd be carrying extra noise in the VRS solution. But a majority of our customers don't use VRS; they use an IMAX or some variant of that. So Tyler, you're telling us stuff's going to move. You can't tell us exactly how much stuff is going to move. It's going to move 5 millimeters. It's going to move 5 centimeters. We won't know how much stuff is going to move until we launch the adjustment. We'll know a little bit sooner than that, but not much sooner. So what if I need something different? What if I want to stay on what we got? What if I want to, stay on the MYCS1 in the US and I want to stay in the version 6.0 in Canada? Well, in fall of 2017, we introduced the ability to do what we call multiple reference frames. And so this allows a seamless ability for customers to fit either for a customer requirement, I want to stay on this, or compliance requirement, I need to broadcast something different um, in in real time. Traditionally, this has always been a post-processed solution, not a real-time solution. But in 2017, we released it as a MRF, a real-time solution. And when we originally released it, it was because of high dynamic areas and legal requirements. And now we get to add realization or solution transitions as well. So this means that we are able to, because of a realization or datum transition, it allows us the ability when NGS says we're going to go from multi-year core solution 1 to multi-year core solution 2, when we go from the NA 2011 EPIC 2010 to the new in 2022 NATRF 2022 datum. When we make these jumps, we have a ability to go back and forth between what we had and what we have now. NRCAN, when we go from version 6.0 to version 7.1, we can move between those two in real time, basically just by connecting to a different mount point. We've been doing this in California for years now, where it allowed customers to move between the current 2019 750 to the common EPIC 2010 to what will be on January 5th, the last. You'll be able to move back to NAT 83, NA 2011, MYCS1, EPIC 2019-750. Washington and Oregon, same thing. I can move from current to common to last. Legal requirements, and this ain't no joke. When you took over the British Columbia network, this was a huge thing for folks up there. In Vancouver Island, they needed CSRS 97. In BC mainland, they need CRS 2002 because of the surveyor's general circular that are 463. You got to be able to broadcast this, and so we did. With MRF, we were able to attack this and tackle this and be able to send out the NRCAN standard 2010 and send out the 97 and the 2002 for the customers and the legal requirements that they operate under. So how do I access this? Well, what goes on? What are you talking about, Tyler? Well, first we have to break this into classes, and we talk about it in classes because it makes it a little easier to talk about. So if we're talking about a realization difference or a solution difference or a datum transition or a high dynamic area transition or difference, we have our current product coordinates that are going out. So current is what are the coordinates of this going out on the standard mount points. So what's going out on MSM near, what's going on RTCM3 IMAX, what's going on RTCM3 VRS, what's going out on those standard mount points. Well, that's always going to be the current epic for that area. Then we have the common. Now, the common and the current can be the same in most of the US and in most of the Canada. The current and common are exactly the same. They're epic 2010, so it makes it really simple. The current in California, 2019-750 right now. No big deal. We also have the common. So you can go from the 2019-750 epic to the 2010 epic should you need to. We have the last. So you can always fall back to the last. So right now in November, when we launched the new coordinates, we also launched a multiple reference frame mount point that had the last coordinates on it. And we'll do the same thing in January. Last common. So we'll have the NYCS1 2010 coordinates in there. And again, for legal requirements. Now, this is a lot of talking, but let's break it down real simple. We have a mount point. We have a required reference frame. So we have indicators and things attached to the mount point that kind of describe it. So if we just started, a standard mount point is MSM IMAX, but we want something different. So we have indicators out here at the end. So we have a correction format, we have a correction type, we have a realization, and we have an epic. And this is how these mount points are structured. So these mount points are available today, right now. So if you want to stay on the NYCS1 solution, you have that option until spring. So you can hop on those right now today and stay on those through the transition into March, into April. But by May, you need to have plans, which we'll get to in a second, to be on the new mount points because these will go away. Same thing for CSRS V6. MSM IMAX CSRS V6 are there. They're available. You can use them today. In high dynamic area, same thing applies. NYCS1 _ IMAX _ MSM CS1 NYCS1 _ 2019-750. So correction format, correction type. Sorry, that's should say realization and epic. So all of those are available to you today. So we continue to maintain these. These are available on our standard corrections for MAX, IMAX, NEAR, and VRS. We maintain for the majority of the US the current RTCM3 MSM. So on transition date of January 5th, when we launch on January 6th, the standard mount points will be updated to the new NYCS2 solution, Epic 2010 for all of the US. We will have the old coordinates. Well, what right to now today is the coordinates that we're broadcasting right now today. Those will be available on the last mount points. RTCM3 underscore IMAX max near VIRS for NYCS1. So if you need to stay on the coordinates that we're broadcasting right now today, those coordinates will be available on an MRF mount point on port 1111 with the nomenclature shown here on the screen. Same thing in Canada. We will move to the new 7.1 solution on all standard mount points on January 6th. And you might ask, why are you doing this? Why are you moving the production standard mount points to the new coordinates? Why don't we just leave those on the old coordinates and then start broadcasting something new? Well, that means that everybody has to transition to the new, should they know to or not. We're going to drag everybody to the new solutions, to the new realizations, because if we don't, at some point in the future, we have to cut off those old solutions. And if we cut off the old solutions on mount points, then that means everybody stops working. So if you didn't attend the webinar, if you just forgot to make that update, on the day that we cut those solutions off, those mount points would go away, and it would cause a gigantic support load for us. It would cause gigantic confusion for our customers, and it would just be unimaginably difficult for everybody to get through. So the simpler thing is, we're going to move all the current mount points to the current solution. We're going to make the old coordinates, the old solutions, the old realizations available on these MRF mount points. So should you want to work on the old coordinates, should you want to work on the old solutions, should you want to work on the old realization, you will have that option for a time. You will be able to go back to that for a time. In high dynamic areas, the same thing will happen. We'll have current, we'll have common, we'll have last, and now we'll have last common. So we'll have last NYCS 1 2010 available there as well. We'll have the new common with NYCS 2 Epic 2010 available. So we've added a little bit to this for our high dynamic areas so that you can always get back to what we were broadcasting on both the production mount points and the common mount points previously. So those will be available. And same thing in Washington and Oregon. Those will be available as well. NYCS 1 will be 2010 will be last, and NYCS 1 2010 will be last common. So those will all remain available, but all production mount points in California, Washington, and Oregon will be updated to NYCS 2 Epic 2020 to get the newest solution available to you. I got a couple questions we'll get to in just 2 seconds. And then the legal requirement areas, we will have similar happens. So in British Columbia, current will be moved to the new version 7.120, excuse me, that's 2010. Sorry, that's 2010. Don't get freaked out. Fix that while we're sitting here. So nobody gets crazy and freaked out if they watch this. Sorry, didn't mean to cause any panic. So current RTCM3 will be moved to version 7.1 Epic 2010. Same thing with MSM, so the GNSS mount points. And then last will be available as CSRS V6 solution. V6 will be on the last mount MRF mount points, and then the alternate 97 and 2002. Those will remain. Those will not be updated at all. Those coordinates will not be touched, and those mount points will continue to be available. If you're an automotive customer or an IoT customer, something outside the normal normal survey construction customer, the ITRF 14 solution will be available starting January 5th, January 6th launch. These are only available on certain license types, so if you don't know what the heck I'm talking about, you don't have to listen to this. But we'll make those available on the same announcement, and then they'll ITRF 14 mount points will be available along with the IGS 08. So you heard me say a lot. Tyler, where can I find all this? This is all on the connection and configuration page. You go in, you put in your connection configuration details, you pick your address, and you will also see the port, the mount point, and the epic, of which it is. Additional to that, you can see more, and you will see other MRF mount points that are available for your area. And now the reference frame also calls out what a realization or solution that it is currently on. So you'll see it say NAT83 in a 2011 MYCS2 or NAT83 CSRS version 7.1 in the standard mount points at the top. And then under See More, you will most likely see the additional mount points of MYCS1 and version 6.0 in there, depending on your service area, correction area that you choose. So that will be there in connection and configuration page. And there's an entire support document that talks about multiple reference frames, what they mean, what they are, and you'll be able to find that simply by typing in MRF, or if you type in MYCS2 or CSRS or anything like that, you will find that as well. So let's take some questions. Let's see here. People who have done one steps will want to use old system if there is a change. Yes. So if you've done a transformation, if you've done a localization, if you've done any type of localization, calibration, transformation, anything like that, if you use the MRF mount point, if you use one of the MRF mount points that have the old solutions on them, the old realizations, the old coordinates on them, those will continue to be valid. You will not have to make any changes at the outset. However, when those mount points are going to be shut down, you will have to make a change. You will have to update your localization. You'll have to update your realization. You'll have to update your transformation, calibration prior to that date. And the reason for that is if you don't, as much as the station moves, that's how much your calibration, transformation, localization will be in error. Same thing. So any localization should be done on January 6th. Any solutions using UTM or other transformation should not combine data before and after January 6th. Correct. So, UTM is really localization. But yes, if you need to stay and make sure you have absolute agreement between your surveys, you will either need to move your pre-January 6 surveys to relocalize or retransform them, create a local transformation system for yourself, or you will need to use one of the multiple reference frame mount points that allows you to stay on the solution coordinates that are in place today, right now, or when you started the solution. When you started in British Columbia, there will be no updates to 97, the coordinates for 1997 and 2002, so it will not affect those at all. But that's the only place that I can think of that we will not making any changes near term or long term on any of the coordinates going out of the mount points. If that answered your questions. Another question, can they use period of time roughly 6 months? Correct. Not 6 months, 3 months, unfortunately. So on January 6th, when this launches, we will maintain the MRF mount points from, well, their MRF mount points are actually in place today, right now, for all of this, so that right now today, you can change, so you don't forget, you can change to the MRF mount points. You can change to the version 6.0 mount points or the NYCS 1 mount points in the US or Canada today, right now, this very second, so that you don't forget on January 6th, and you can continue using those until the spring adjustment. When the spring adjustment comes, that's typically late April, early May, we will be deprecating these mount points. And again, I wish we could keep them in perpetuity, but that just can't happen, because as we bring on new stations, as we have to move stations, as we have to do things to stations, we cannot get back to the CSRS V6 solution. We cannot get back to the NYCS 1 solution. And so you will have an immediate discontinuity between two stations that are sitting side by side. So we can only maintain this for a short period of time. We're trying to give a good run out to allow you to take care of this. Again, this could be a 5 mil change to a station. This could be a 5 centimeter change to a station. So it will depend on which stations you use as to the the effects that it will have on you. Colin, will quick shift. That's a rover specific question. You'd have to ask support, not us. Greg, same answer. What exactly you need to do on your exact data collector would need to be taken up with your hardware support rep to really detail of what they think would be the best way to handle this. From our perspective, if you're working on one solution today, you can stay on that for a little bit of time by going to use the other mount points, but knowing that those are going to go away. If you need to make sure that you have matching long term, then you would do your own localization, your own transformation, your own calibration on site with known control that fits to what you need, and maintain that for yourself. But I would take that specific question, Greg Corin, up with your specific hardware manufacturer or support. So Tyler, that's a lot of information. How do we know what's going on? Well, connection configuration tool that I just showed you will tell you what's going on your particular mount point, what epic it's in, what realization it's in, what solutions it's on. So that's how you know what's going on there. It will be called out here. You will see it very clearly. If you need to be on something different, you will have those options by going to see more and seeing the additional mount points down below. If you want to see on a station level what's going on, you'll be able to find this on the portal. So we'll have processing, we'll have common, we'll have current, we'll have last, we'll have superseded, we'll have all of that available to you in the portal. So you'll be able to find that, you'll be able to reference that, you'll be able to see that, you'll be able to see the effects of this change by going to current or common. So you'll see what the current broadcast coordinates are. You'll also see any superseded coordinates. So you'll see an NYCS2 solution realization. You'll also see an NYCS1 solution or realization for a particular site. Same thing in Canada. You'll be able to see the common. You'll be able to see the superseded version 6.0. You'll be able to see the alternate coordinates. You'll be able to see all of these right inside the portal, so you can see what the changes were for yourself and if this station is affected by the change. If you don't know how to use this, you go to the site search tool, you type in the site you want, you hit superseded coordinates, coordinate class info, and you will see all of this information. You'll see the epic, you'll see the reference frame, you'll see all of that information in the portal. And we are doing some underlying updates to the infrastructure and architecture of this to make it clear, more concise, and easier to maintain, so it's correct in real time. So on the horizon, biggest thing on the horizon is the coordinate update. and we're going to get to that again in just a second. We're going to go over some more specific questions. But some of the things tying to this is also our super control program. We've made a considerable investment in our super control program, and this is to support our ongoing adjustments, our ongoing integrity monitoring, to support this ITRF 2014 move, et cetera. So this is even a higher accuracy subset of SmartNet stations that is used as underlying control. If you're a US guy, you might have heard of the NGS Foundational Course Program. This is basically our flavor of it. All SmartNet super control sites will be, have been, or will be accepted to the NGS course program, or we're working in conjunction with NRCAN to do this. Why are we making this investment? Well, it improves our daily solutions availability for integrity monitoring. It improves our solution availability for commissioning new stations, which everybody always wants new stations. And then it also improves consistency to adjustment. Some of the things that we're always fighting through, either daily or adjustment to adjustment, is, this NGS station was decommissioned. We don't have control of that station. That's not producing data when we start to do an adjustment. So, we're having to move things around, and then, we can't check from adjustment to adjustment what kind of consistency we have. We can't check, what kind of integrity we have easily. And so this is our investment in that. It's a pretty sizable and investment in cost and also scale. So these are all the stations that are part of our super control program. You'll see the ones in green are rolled out. The ones in blue are being rolled out, 2 of which were actually installed today, excitingly enough. So station in New Mexico and the station in Wisconsin were actually installed today. So that's awesome. And we'll continue to work on this as the locations become available. You heard me say at the very front end, this is not the 2022 move. Well, it's not, but NGS will be adopting a new geocentric plate fixed reference frame, NATRF 2022. So that's the North American Terrestrial Reference Frame of 2022. Because it is a geocentric reference frame, it will differ by approximately 2.2 meters from the current NAD 83 reference frame. So big move, big change. They'll also adopt a new geoid model and geopotential hiding and all sorts of other stuff. What does this mean? It means hold on to your hat, because it's a big change, but it's not the one that's coming on January 6th, 2020. This is a 2022 thing, and most likely it's not really a 2022 thing. It's most likely a 2023 thing or a 2024 thing, depending on when NGS gets it done and gets it rolled out. They tell us they're on track to do 2022, but we waited on ITRF 14 and NYCS 2 for about a year. So I would say 2023 would be a realistic option. You can go to ngsnoa.gov/datums, new datums index HTML, to find out more about this. In some ways, this 2.2 meter move is awesome, because it's different if it's moved 2.2 meters versus moving a couple centimeters. So it's going to be a big change. Most state organizations and those type of things have started talking about this, because it's going to require a lot of different things to happen at the local level, at the state level, at the governing bodies level, et cetera, before this happens. But it's going to be an interesting change in 2022. So wrapping up, we put down a few questions that were asked either last time or have been asked in the past. Some we covered, some we haven't. How do I find out about the status of SmartNet? Just to recap: status page, status.smartnetna.com. Live status is live.smartnetna.com, and announcements are at Twitter or on the right-hand column of the portal. How do I find out more about this adjustment? Well, we'll continue to publish new information as it becomes available in the coming weeks on the adjustment. I would encourage you to go to the support website to review the available content. So we'll have the links. I know that the question earlier was, can you provide the link? And we can. It's if you go in and type NGS or NRCAN in the support website, you'll find the link to the NGS and NRCAN content. We will provide a list of stations with changes greater than 35 millimeters so that you can then look and see if those are stations that you rely on a daily basis. We will provide links to the multiple reference frame information that is already up. The station list is not up yet. It will be up just as soon as we get all the final adjustment done. But the links to the multiple reference station information are already up, as well as the new NYCS 1 mount points are already in place and available for your use today should you want to go ahead and transition or stay on the solution until April or May. A recording of each of our webinars, including this one. The content will be roughly the same. Questions asked may be different. I don't think we had a lot of the same questions, so yeah. Check out the questions. Timestamped links to Q&A will be published. So any questions that we've been asked today or any questions that we were asked last time, there's actually timestamped links so you can jump right to those questions to get answers should you need to. So all of this is on the support article page or pages on support.smartnetna.com. Does this affect you for GNSS corrections? Yes. If you want GNSS, you got to use the right mount points. So make sure you're using the right mount points for GNSS. So one of the MSM mount points will give you GNSS. If you only care about GPS and GLONASS, you don't have to worry about it. But we would encourage you to move to the newer mount points if you're looking for GNSS just to stay current, or if you were to upgrade your receiver. Santa came and visited you and brought you a shiny new receiver that's now GNSS capable, and you were on the old GG, then you might just stay on the old GG and not get the full whiz-bang benefits of the little elves that are dancing around in your GNSS receiver. So go ahead and update the mount point to MSM mount point if you want GNSS, or if you might get it in the future. Adjustment effects. Does this affect me? Will this broadcast coordinate adjustment affect the stations I use? It's not really a simple answer. It may or may not, but assume yes. That's the safest answer, is just go ahead and assume yes, it's going to affect you. Coordinates may change as little as 5 millimeters, but they may also change in excess of 5 centimeters. We do not know the location or area dependency. It's not just like this one area of, Outer Mongolia is being affected by this change. No, it's really station dependent, both because of the changes in the velocity, but also because we haven't updated broadcast coordinates in ever, since we launched coordinates in this set of coordinates in 2012. So about 7 years. We will publish a knowledge base article with stations requiring greater than 35 millimeter change so that you can be prepared for that. It is incumbent on all users to adhere to good surveying practices to assure changes do not have unintended consequences. So when we make that change, you need to make sure that you take the requisite steps on your side to make sure that change does not negatively affect you. We're trying to give the best way we can. We're trying to give the ability to use MRF mount points so that you can stay on the last coordinate class, you can stay on that MYCS1 realization, or you can stay on that version 6 realization on January 6th through the spring. But you will have to make a change at some point. MRF, does it affect you? Will MRF additions affect the mount point I use? Again, maybe. If you want to continue to utilize the MYCS1 realization in the US, then yes, you will have to change mount points. If you want to continue to utilize version 6.0 solution in Canada, then yes, you need to switch mount points. If you want to immediately utilize the latest realization solution and make accommodations on the rover to handle these changes, localization, calibration, transformation, then no, you don't. You can just continue to work on what you got, and you'll continue to carry along. The new MYCS1 mount points are available. They became available on January 6th, and they will, again, these MRFs will be deprecated on the release of the spring 2020 adjustment. So this means you'll need to perform your own localization, your own calibration, your own transformation sometime between now and then if you are going to be using these mount points. If you are using other tools, so if you're using Opus in the US, Opus is now using an MYCS2 solution. So if you want to use Opus and you want to use SmartNet, then you have to be on the new mount points to make sure things jive and fit. Same thing for the PPP solution in Canada. They are in 7.0. They will be moving to 7.1. So if you want to assure consistency between your PPP solutions you get and your RTK solutions you get out of SmartNet, you will have to be on the new mount points. So it's not just, we're making the change. NGS has already made the change. NRCAN has already made one change, and they will be making another change early in the new year to 7.1. So to assure those consistencies fit, you need to stay on the existing production standard mount points and not be working on MRF mount points. But if you have old projects that you need to transition, these older realization mount points will be available. They are available right now, and they will continue to be available through the spring 2020 adjustment. Again, I wish we could leave those in place and you could just sing along and work along forever with those, but unfortunately, you can't. This is not something that we control. The underlying velocity model is different, and if we don't jump or cut those off at some point, there will be discontinuities and unintended consequences long term. So this is something that we talk about every single time we do a webinar. This is how we make decisions of what we do with SmartNet. And one of these things is pretty pronounced, and that is provide a stable and reliable infrastructure on a standard reference frame. Right now, the standard reference frame is MYCS2 in the US, and soon will be version 7.1 in Canada. And so if we're going to operate in a standard reference frame and we're going to stick to our commitment here, then we have to be prepared to make those jumps when the governing bodies make those jumps. And unfortunately, it has a lot of consequences to all of our users, but it's something that we have to do to make sure that we fit together now and long term. Why are we doing it? We have to. We're making the choice of when we do it to have the least impact. We're trying to do it before everybody's being crazy in the new year, new jobs, new spring, new summer. There's never a good time to do it. About the best time we can do it is right after the new year. And so we're put a lot of pressure on ourselves to get it done so that it has the minimal effect on the customers as possible so they can start new jobs in the new year on the new reference frames and the new solutions. So questions. Let's see here. Will subscribers be notified again as to what is occurring? And I'm email a record to the user with links as you mentioned. Yes, there will be another email, blast email that goes out. I don't remember the date that goes out. Find the date. I'll find the date that it goes out. But yes, there's another email announcement that goes out to everybody on. This is great audio. There's actually two more that go out. There'll be another one goes out. I think just before Christmas. There's another one that goes out on January 3rd for sure. The other one I have scratched out, so I'm not sure we're doing that one. But there will be at least one more blast email going out here shortly. We do have one more webinar on December 19th, next Thursday, I think, in the middle of the day. December 19th is another webinar that is occurring. So that if you wanted to listen to the dulcet tones of Tyler Collier, I'll be back here doing this one more time. But we are recording this, and we will, again, publish this and make these available along with Q&A timestamp links should you need them. The question we had about an hour ago now seems like, do you anticipate adding coverage in Eastern Prairie provinces Regina, Saskatoon, and Winnipeg. Not right now. There's no heavy investment scheduled for those areas that I'm aware of, but we're always trying to expand. We're always trying to add coverage where necessary. But general, but what advice would you give to any student in surveying program that might be interested in going into a GNSS surveying specifically? Run far away. No, I'm just kidding. Find somebody that does it and talk to them. Find a mentor that really is involved in it. There are a lot of great folks out there that really get into it. If you get into the weeds, like what we're talking about a lot today, it can get really interesting and really challenging and really fulfilling. But really, best thing to do is talk to a mentor that really specializes in GNSS surveying. And talk to them and figure out what the best way it is. Any station outage right now has nothing to do with this. Well, I won't say not any station outage. The only station outages that would have anything to do with this coordinate update are stations that got moved when we put a moratorium on launching new stations. Somebody will have to remind me exactly when we put the moratorium on turning on new stations before the update. I want to say it was about 3 weeks ago. I'm waiting for one of my support staff to tell me I'm completely wrong or completely right, because we mentioned it in the I got yes. Thanks. I think it was about 2 or 3 weeks ago that we put a moratorium on launching new stations as we were moving through the adjustment. So it could be stations that are affected, but the specific station that you're referencing in Arizona, no, it is not done to that. I think that's a hardware failure or an antenna failure. But if you'll put a ticket into support at smartnetna.com, then one of the engineers can get back and maybe give you an update on that specific station. All right. Well, we've gone over about 7 minutes. People are starting to bounce pretty hard, it looks like. I'll stay on for another couple of minutes, another 2 minutes till 7:40 Eastern time to answer any additional questions, big or small. The main takeaway, guys, is this could be a small effect on you. It could be a big effect on you. Just know that there could be an effect. That's the most important takeaway from this is, go and look at the support article on the greater than 35 millimeter stations, how it's going to affect you. Be prepared to do the transformational localization, the calibration on site should you need to. Be prepared to use the MRF mount points that get you to NYCS1, back to NYCS1 or version 6.0. They are available today, right now, this moment. They are on the portal and connection configuration guide should you need it. But just be prepared. That's be a Boy Scout, be prepared. That's the takeaway that you guys need from today. And should be the one that you know about as we move forward towards this adjustment. Clarify, we need to download new geoids after January 6th using 12B currently. Yes, you would want to use 20 geoid 18 after January 6th to make sure you're compliant. What would be a day in a life of an employee of SmartNet NA such as you? Oh, we don't have enough time for that question. Drop an email into support. That's a good question, though. Depends on the day, man. Depends on the day. I like the question, though. Okay, guys. Another minute or so. If you do have any other questions after this, support at smartnetna.com, or you can check out support www.smartnetna.com to go to the support articles, support knowledge base. Anything that has to do with this will be pinned to the very top. So it will be right there at the front of you. But if you can't find it there, type in a keyword. Most likely you'll find it. But if you can't find it there, drop us an email. It's right here on the screen. We do thank you guys for being customers. We thank you for attending, and good luck. Merry Christmas. Happy New Year. And hold on to your hats. Thanks, everybody.